I never thought I'd be the one holding all the cards at Richard Keller's dinner table. The same table where, just 3 years ago, he'd raised his crystal tumbler and proclaimed, "To real success, not pretenders." His eyes locked on mine, while his son, my boyfriend James, shifted uncomfortably beside me. That night, I swallowed my humiliation with cheap wine I couldn't even identify, while the Kellers discussed their Hampton summer plans around me. The college dropout dating the golden son, the girl from the worn-down triple-decker in Burlington who'd never even seen the inside of a country club. What Richard didn't know then was that I was already building something he would desperately need, something that would bring me back to that same mahogany table years later, watching him raise another condescending toast while the weight of his signature on my company's contract pressed against my heart from inside my blazer pocket. When he finished his speech about true achievement and earning your place, I finally raised my glass too. His eyes narrowed slightly at my smile, a smile that knew something he didn't. I wasn't just James Keller's girlfriend anymore. I was his father's new boss. The Kellers weren't just wealthy, they were New England old money, the kind that spoke in hushed tones about their donations to Yale and summered in houses with names instead of addresses. Richard had built Keller Investments from his father's modest brokerage into a financial powerhouse that managed billions. Their sprawling colonial in Wellesley Hills stood as a monument to his success, complete with the requisite tennis court and imported marble in every bathroom. James was the youngest of 3 Keller children, and the only one who didn't immediately fall in line with Richard's expectations. His sister Elizabeth was already a partner at a prestigious Boston law firm, and his brother Thomas was being groomed to take over the family business. James wanted to design sustainable buildings and speak about climate responsibility, ideas that made Richard's jaw tighten whenever they were mentioned at dinner. I met James during my second attempt at college, this time at a state school after dropping out of Boston University when my scholarship money ran dry. He was guest lecturing in my environmental design class. He had his father's height and confident posture, but none of the coldness. When he asked me out for coffee, I said yes, despite knowing we came from different worlds. My family's world was a 3-bedroom apartment shared with my mother and younger sister. Mom worked double shifts as an ICU nurse since my father left when I was 12. We weren't poor, but we lived paycheck to paycheck. College wasn't expected. It was a luxury, a gamble on a better future. The first time James brought me home, Margaret Keller, his mother, had been perfectly polite while clearly cataloging everything about me that didn't sit. My off-the-rack dress, my lack of knowledge about wine regions, the way I sometimes dropped my R's when I spoke. Richard was less subtle. "So you're studying business administration?" he'd asked over appetizers, making the degree sound like a hobby rather than a field of study. "Yes, with a focus on entrepreneurship and digital marketing," I'd replied. Practical, I suppose. Though these days everyone thinks they can be an entrepreneur with a laptop and a Facebook page. He chuckled, looking around the table for agreement. "James tells me you've already left one university." James intervened. "Dad, Alexis had a full scholarship that—" "No, it's okay," I cut in. "Yes, Mr. Keller, I had to leave BU when my funding fell through. I worked for 2 years to save enough to start again." "Admirable persistence," he'd said, in a tone that suggested it was anything but. The worst was the Christmas when James gave me a small diamond pendant. Richard had spotted it over dessert. "That's lovely. Tiffany's?" he'd asked me directly. I think so, I'd answered, touching it self-consciously. Richard turned to James. The little blue box collection, smart choice, affordable quality. Then, to his wife, remember when I got you your first real piece from them, before we upgraded? The table had fallen silent. Even Margaret looked embarrassed. It wasn't just the big moments. It was the constant undercurrent. The way Richard would explain basic financial concepts to me as if I couldn't possibly understand them, despite my business degree. The way he'd ask James about future plans while glancing my way. The suggestion that James was just sowing wild oats before settling down with someone suitable. Meanwhile, I was building something in secret. My senior project had evolved into a startup, a platform connecting small, sustainable businesses with corporate investment. I'd secured seed funding from a professor who believed in me and worked nights coding the platform myself. I called it Greenbridge. When a major sustainable energy conference came to Boston, I used every connection I had to secure a booth in the expo hall. I couldn't afford proper marketing materials, so I designed them myself and printed them at the campus lab. My roommate helped me set up. I never expected Richard Keller to be there. He rarely attended fringe business events. But there he was, striding down the aisle with a group of men in expensive suits, stopping occasionally at booths that interested him. When he spotted me, surprise flickered across his face before settling into amusement. "Alexis, what a surprise! School project?" he asked, gesturing to my modest display. "Actually, it's my company, Mr. Keller. We connect sustainable startups with established investors looking to green their portfolios." "How nice," he smiled tightly. "Well, good luck with your little venture." He moved on without even taking a brochure. Later, I overheard him at the bar telling a colleague about James's girlfriend playing entrepreneur with some green matchmaking website. I didn't tell James. I didn't tell anyone. I just went back to my booth and pitched my heart out to everyone else. By the end of the conference, I had 3 serious investors interested and a waiting list of startups wanting to join the platform. That night, I made a promise to myself. One day, Richard Keller would see me as more than just his son's unsuitable girlfriend. He would see me as someone to be reckoned with. Fast forward 2 years. Greenbridge had grown from my dorm room project into a legitimate business with 15 employees and offices in Cambridge. We'd connected over 50 sustainable startups with major investment, resulting in 3 successful IPOs. My face had appeared in Forbes' 30 Under 30 list, though I doubted the Kellers had noticed. James and I were still together, though we'd weathered some storms. He'd taken a job at an architectural firm specializing in sustainable design and had finally stopped trying to get his father's approval for his career choices. We'd moved in together, splitting rent on a modest apartment in Somerville. Richard and Margaret were celebrating their 35th wedding anniversary with a weekend-long event at their summer house on Cape Cod. Despite my history with Richard, I was included in the invitation, a gesture I suspected came from Margaret rather than him. "We don't have to go," James said, watching me read the embossed invitation. "We could say we have work commitments." "No," I replied. "Let's go. It's important to your mom." What I didn't tell James was that Greenbridge had just landed our biggest potential client yet. Keller Investments was looking to launch a green investment fund to appeal to younger, more environmentally conscious clients. Their RFP had come across my desk the previous week, and I'd nearly fallen out of my chair. James didn't know because his father had kept this initiative quiet, even within the family. Richard had recently faced criticism for Keller Investments' heavy backing of traditional energy companies. This green fund was clearly a PR move, but it was also a massive opportunity for Greenbridge. I'd submitted our proposal anonymously through a holding company name. Our credentials were impeccable, our platform exactly what they needed, and our pricing competitive. I knew we'd make the shortlist, but I didn't know if we'd win the contract before the anniversary weekend. The Thursday before we left for the Cape, my phone rang. It was our contact at Keller Investments. We'd won the contract. $3 million over 2 years with an option to renew. I hung up and stared at the wall, my heart pounding. We were going to be Richard Keller's service provider. Greenbridge would be instrumental in launching his company's most publicized initiative of the year, and he had no idea. I could have called and canceled our trip to the anniversary. I could have told James immediately. I could have handled it all professionally, with emails and formal meetings. But something in me, something hardened by years of subtle humiliation and dismissal, wanted to see his face when he realized. I wanted that moment. We arrived at the Keller's Cape House on Friday afternoon. The sprawling shingled mansion overlooked the ocean, flags fluttering from the roofline, staff already setting up for the evening's welcome dinner in the garden. Margaret greeted us warmly. Richard nodded from across the lawn where he was discussing wine selections with the caterer. "James and Alexis, dear, you look lovely," Margaret said, embracing us both. "James, your brother and his wife are by the pool with the kids. Alexis, would you like a tour? I don't think you've seen the house since the renovation." As Margaret showed me through rooms filled with maritime art and expensive furniture, I spotted a copy of the Wall Street Journal on a side table. The business section was folded open to an article announcing Keller Investments' new green initiative. The article mentioned that they'd partnered with an innovative platform, but didn't name Greenbridge specifically. The formal announcement was scheduled for Monday. Throughout the afternoon, I mingled with James's extended family and his parents' friends. Most were polite, if distant. Elizabeth, James's sister, actually seemed interested in hearing about my business, though I kept details vague. "Dad says sustainable investing is the future," she said. "He's launching something big next week, apparently." "Is that so?" I replied, sipping my champagne. "That's surprising." "Only because the board forced his hand," she confided. "The younger partners were threatening revolt if he didn't modernize the portfolio." As the sun began to set, the 60 or so guests were directed to tables set up on the lawn, overlooking the ocean. James and I were seated at Richard and Margaret's table, along with Elizabeth and her husband Thomas and his wife, and 2 of Richard's oldest friends. Dinner proceeded with the expected formality. Premium wines flowed, conversations about politics, the stock market, and real estate values around the Cape dominated. No one asked about my business, though several people congratulated James on his recent project designing a net-zero energy building for a tech company. As dessert was being served, Richard stood, champagne flute in hand. The garden fell silent. "Margaret and I want to thank you all for coming to celebrate with us," he began. 35 years together, building a family and a legacy we're proud of. He spoke at length about their life together, their children's accomplishments, the growth of his company. Then he turned reflective. "Success isn't just about money," he said, surveying the gathered faces, "though that certainly helps." Polite laughter rippled through the crowd. "It's about building something lasting, something real." His gaze drifted to me for just a moment. "In business, as in life, there are those who achieve through hard work and vision, and those who, Well, those who talk a good game, but never quite deliver the substance behind the pitch. James tensed beside me. I placed my hand on his knee under the table. To 35 years of real success, Richard concluded, raising his glass higher, and to distinguishing yourself from the pretenders. Everyone raised their glasses. To real success, they echoed. I raised mine too, but my hand was shaking slightly, not from hurt this time, but from anticipation. The contract with his signature was in my purse, and in that moment, I decided Sunday's family brunch would be too long to wait. The dinner continued with speeches from the children and close friends. As coffee and digestives were served, guests began to mingle between tables. Richard held court near the bar that had been set up on the terrace, surrounded by golf buddies and business associates. I excused myself from the table, telling James I needed to freshen up. Instead, I went to our guest room and retrieved the contract from my purse. $3 million, signed by Richard Keller himself 2 days ago. His signature bold and confident across the final page, committing Keller Investments to Greenbridge, to me, without knowing it. When I returned to the garden, I approached the bar and ordered a scotch, neat. Richard raised an eyebrow when he saw me. "Alexis, enjoying yourself?" he asked, more statement than question. "Very much, Mr. Keller. It's a beautiful celebration." "Richard, please, after all this time, I think we can drop the formalities." I smiled and took a sip of my scotch. "Actually, I've been meaning to congratulate you. I heard about Keller Investments' new green initiative." His expression shifted slightly, surprised that I would know about it. "Thank you. Yes, we're making an announcement Monday, expanding into new markets." "It's a smart move," I said. "The sustainable sector is growing exponentially." He nodded, clearly unused to me commenting on his business decisions. "It's where the future is headed, like it or not. And you found a platform partner already, I understand." Now he looked genuinely surprised. "You've done your homework?" "Yes, we've contracted with a smaller firm that specializes in this space. Sometimes these niche players have their uses before the bigger firms move in." I took another sip of my scotch, feeling it burn down my throat. Around us, the party continued, voices and laughter blending with the sound of waves breaking on the shore below. "Would you like to know which firm?" he asked, a hint of condescension in his voice. "I doubt you'd have heard of them." That was the moment, the perfect opening I couldn't have scripted better myself. "Greenbridge," I said quietly. He frowned slightly. "Yes, actually, you follow the industry more closely than I thought." "I don't just follow it, Richard. I lead it." I reached into my blazer and pulled out the folded contract. "This arrived at my office yesterday." He stared at the document, uncomprehending at first. Then I opened it to the signature page. "Your team was very impressed with our platform. They said it was exactly what Keller Investments needs to establish credibility in the sustainable market quickly." The color drained from his face as understanding dawned. You're saying Greenbridge is your company?" I nodded. "Founded it 3 years ago. We're the leading connector of sustainable startups and traditional investment in New England. But then, you know that now. Your team did very thorough due diligence." By now, a few people nearby had fallen silent, sensing something unfolding. James's brother Thomas moved closer, curious. "This is unexpected," Richard managed, his composure slipping. "Success often is, for those who aren't paying attention." I refolded the contract and tucked it back into my pocket. To answer your question from earlier, yes, I am enjoying myself very much tonight." Richard's jaw tightened. Does James know about this coincidence? It's not a coincidence. Your company needed the best, and we won the contract on merit. And no, James doesn't know yet. I respect the boundaries between his career and mine, just as I'm sure you'll respect the boundaries between your company's new partnership and your personal opinions about me. Thomas was now openly staring, along with several of Richard's business friends. "Well," Richard said, attempting to regain his footing, "business is business. Congratulations." "Thank you," I replied. "I'd like to propose a toast." I raised my glass. "To recognizing real success, no matter where it comes from." Those nearby raised their glasses uncertainly, looking between Richard and me. Richard himself hesitated before lifting his glass a mere inch off the table. "If you'll excuse me," I said, "I should find James. We have some good news to share." As I walked away, I heard Thomas ask his father, "Dad, what just happened?" I found James talking with his sister near the dessert table. My hands were shaking, adrenaline coursing through me. "Everything okay?" he asked, noticing my expression. "More than okay," I said. "Can we talk privately for a minute?" We walked down toward the water's edge, away from the lights and the noise of the party. There, with the waves crashing nearby, I told him everything. About Greenbridge winning the contract, about the confrontation with his father. "You didn't tell me we were bidding on my father's business," he said, processing the information. "I didn't know it was his until the RFP came in," I explained. "And then, I wanted to win it fair and square. No connections, no favors. Just our work standing on its own." James was quiet for a long moment. Then he started to laugh, softly at first, then louder. "God, his face must have been priceless," he said finally. "I can't believe I missed it." "You're not upset?" He took my hands in his. "Are you kidding? This is incredible, Alexis. You built something amazing, and even my father couldn't deny its value. I'm so proud of you." We returned to the party to find small groups of people in intense conversation. Richard was nowhere to be seen. Margaret approached us, looking concerned. "James, your father isn't feeling well. He's gone up to the house. What's happening? Everyone's whispering." James squeezed my hand. "Mom, let me tell you about Alexis's company, the one that's going to be working with Dad starting Monday." The rest of the weekend unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance of awkwardness. Richard didn't appear at breakfast the next morning. Margaret, after hearing the full story from James, oscillated between embarrassment and a poorly concealed admiration. "He'll come around," she told me privately as we helped prepare for Saturday's activities. "Richard respects business acumen above almost everything else." I wasn't so sure, but I appreciated her attempt at bridge building. By mid-morning, the news had spread through the entire family. Elizabeth cornered me by the pool. "So you're the mystery partner firm?" she said, sunglasses hiding her expression. "That explains why Dad looked like he'd seen a ghost last night." "It wasn't personal," I replied. "It was just business." She smiled then, unexpectedly. "Of course it was personal, and I respect you for it. Do you know how many times I've wanted to show him up like that? But I took the easy path. Law school, prestigious firm, all according to plan." "It wasn't about showing him up," I said, though we both knew that wasn't entirely true. "Whatever you tell yourself." She sipped her mimosa. "The board is going to love this, by the way. They've been pushing him to diversify for years. Having his son's girlfriend's company as the partner just adds a delicious layer of irony." Thomas was less amused. He cornered James later that day, and though I couldn't hear their conversation, the animated gestures and Thomas's reddening face told me enough. James walked away mid-sentence, something I'd never seen him do with his brother before. "He thinks I put you up to it," James told me afterward, "that this was some elaborate revenge plot we cooked up together." "What did you tell him?" "That you've never needed my help to succeed at anything, and he should be worried about keeping his job if he can't recognize talent when it's right in front of him." Richard finally emerged for the formal anniversary dinner Saturday night. He was cordial but distant, speaking to me only when necessary. I caught him watching me several times when he thought I wasn't looking, his expression unreadable. The real surprise came Sunday morning before the farewell brunch. I was walking along the beach alone, giving James some time with his mother, when a figure appeared on the path ahead. Richard, in casual clothes I'd never seen him wear before, khakis and a simple sweater, looking almost approachable. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, gesturing toward the shoreline. We walked in silence for several minutes, the only sound the gulls overhead and waves crashing on the sand. "My father was a broker in Springfield," he said finally. "Small office, local clients, nothing fancy. When I told him I wanted to expand, go after bigger accounts in Boston, he laughed at me, said I was getting above myself." I remained silent, unsure where this was going. First million I made, I bought my mother a house in a neighborhood my father could never have afforded. He never forgave me for it. Richard stopped walking and faced the ocean. Success changes family dynamics, not always for the better. "Is that a warning?" I asked. "An observation." He turned to look at me directly. "I underestimated you, Alexis. That's on me." "Yes, it is." He almost smiled. "You won the contract because your platform is the best option for what we need. That's what my team tells me, and they don't know about personal connections." "I know. But this creates complications for the business relationship, for James, for the family." I took a deep breath. With all due respect, Richard, those complications were always there. The only difference is now you have to acknowledge them. He nodded slowly. "Fair point." After another pause, he continued, "The contract is signed. We'll honor it, of course, but I want to be clear, there will be no special treatment. If anything, we'll be watching your performance more closely. I wouldn't expect anything less. And James? What does this mean for the two of you?" The question surprised me. It seemed almost concerned. "That's between James and me," I replied. "But we've always supported each other's careers. This doesn't change that." Richard looked like he wanted to say more, but thought better of it. Instead, he extended his hand. "To a productive partnership, then." I shook it, feeling the surreal nature of the moment. To a productive partnership. As we walked back toward the house, he asked me about Greenbridge's growth strategy and actually listened to my answers. It wasn't acceptance exactly, but it was something. The announcement on Monday made the business pages, Keller Investments launching their green fund with technology partner Greenbridge. Our website traffic increased 500% overnight. Investor calls flooded in. The following months brought unexpected developments. James proposed, with a ring nothing like what his father would have chosen, a simple band with an emerald instead of a diamond. "Green for Greenbridge," he joked, "and because you've never been a diamond kind of girl." Elizabeth left her law firm to start her own practice focused on environmental law and became one of Greenbridge's legal advisors. Thomas remained cool toward me, but professional when our businesses intersected. Richard was the biggest surprise. After the initial shock wore off, his competitive nature kicked in. He began championing the green fund within his company, setting aggressive growth targets. In client meetings, he would introduce me not as James's fiancé, but as our technology partner's CEO. At the quarterly review, 6 months after the contract signing, he arrived at our Cambridge office personally, something unheard of for a client of Keller Investment size. He toured our operations, met our team, and actually took notes. "You've built something substantial here," he said as we concluded the tour. "More than I realized." "Thank you," I replied, sensing a rare moment of genuine respect. "I've been thinking about expanding the fund's scope, targeting more early-stage companies, not just established ones." He hesitated. "I'd value your input on how we might structure that." It wasn't an apology for years of condescension. It wasn't full acceptance into the Keller fold. But it was acknowledgement, businesswoman to businesswoman, and in Richard's world, that meant everything. The wedding planning brought its own challenges. Margaret wanted the plaza in June. I preferred a smaller venue. Richard surprised everyone by suggesting we use the Cape House. Where it all came to a head, he said with an almost smile. "Last week, I visited my mom at the apartment where I grew up. I'd been helping her look for a new place, something with more space, in a better neighborhood. She'd initially refused, saying she didn't need my money. 'It's not charity, Mom,' I'd told her. 'It's family.' She looked around the living room where she'd raised 2 daughters alone, working double shifts and never complaining. 'You know,' she said, 'when you told me about that first dinner at the Kellers, how small they made you feel, I wanted to march over there and give them a piece of my mind.' I'm glad you didn't," she smiled. "Me too. You handled it better your way. But Alexis," her expression turned serious, "don't become them. Success is wonderful, but don't let it change how you see people." I hugged her tightly. "I won't, I promise." That night, as James and I had dinner with Richard and Margaret to discuss wedding details, Richard raised his glass. "To the newest ventures," he said, "both personal and professional." I raised my glass in return, catching his eye. For a moment, I saw something there I'd never seen before. Not just respect, but a hint of pride. The girl from Burlington had earned her place at the table. Looking back now, I realize that what happened with Richard wasn't just about proving him wrong or winning some personal victory. It was about claiming my own space in a world that wasn't designed for people like me. Sometimes, the people who dismiss you become the very ones who open doors you never expected. Not because they suddenly become generous, but because reality forces their hand. Success is the most eloquent response to doubt. My relationship with the Kellers will always be complicated, but there's a certain peace in knowing that I never compromised who I was or where I came from to earn their respect. I built something real, something valuable, and even Richard couldn't deny that. If you're facing your own Richard Keller right now, someone who makes you feel small, who questions your worth, who can't see past their own assumptions, remember this. Their opinion of you isn't your reality unless you let it be. Build anyway, grow anyway, succeed anyway. Sometimes the sweetest victory isn't just proving them wrong. It's making them partners in the future they couldn't imagine for you. If this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who needs to hear that their background doesn't determine their future. Thanks for listening.